Giovanni Contreras, editor-in-chief at The Prep Weekly, here with an exclusive interview with John P. And we're going to go over some of the problems with distance learning and just get some thoughts on what students have to say about distance learning. Hey, John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Um, and doing good. I've got a bunch of homework this Wednesday, but I'm working through it. Uh, Looking forward to the weekend and then to winter bork.
Yeah.
And yes, I did just misspell break as bork in my speech. It's a thing I do because of, the aforementioned bad fan fiction, but that's not important. What is important is, the questions that you're going to ask that I'm not going to rush ahead and answer before you've asked them.
Right. I'll shoot my first question right now. So, since distance learning has started at Summit Prep, students have faced new struggles and problems caused by the switch from face-to-face learning to distance learning. How have you adjusted to the switch?
I mean, distance learning has caused some new problems for me, but it's also fixed some old problems. Like, one of my big issues at school was that everyone was constantly shouting and playing video games and doing everything they could to distract everyone else, and I could never freaking focus on getting my homework done. For a multitude of reasons, partly because of the environment being unfamiliar and uncomfortable, partly because of like everybody talking at once, partly because it was a nonstop being supposed to focus with no breaks aside from lunch to cool my brain down. Um, but there are also problems. One of the biggest problems I've seen isn't with the virtual format itself; it's with how the assignments that were designed for a non-virtual format have not been updated very well to the virtual format. Um, should I go into detail on that?
Yeah, I can actually, along with that, ask you. You can also answer this. What problem, which you already kind of answered, what problems have you had to overcome over distance learning?
So the biggest problem I've had with distance learning it is is that a lot of the teachers had an assignment plan for a non-distance semester, which really they could have updated over the summer or something, but there were probably some problems with doing that. I'm not going to pretend I know what being a teacher's like. Um, and But anyway, because of that, some teachers make some effort to alter their assignments over the course of the assignment doing, and um, like some of them end up invalidating parts of the assignment so we just don't have to do them. But every so often they won't like alter it enough, and there'll be a ton more work than we were intended to have. And a lot of the time, from what I've seen, people just, they try to deal with it and then they get crazy behind because a lot of people, heck, even me, have gotten crazy behind because of, the distance learning and how all the lesson plans get mixed up and stuff. Um, and Summit, unlike a lot of other schools, does not have an obsession with teachers' authority and how students can never contradict them or talk back to them or question them or any number of other things. Instead, um, like the relationship between student and teacher is meant to be more collaborative. Students are supposed to share their experiences with teachers, especially their mentors, and get like and especially with this shift to virtual learning, I think it's really important that students share their experiences, like share when something has become ridiculously hard because of the shift to virtual learning, so that like the teachers can know about it and do stuff to fix it, or if the teachers know about it and aren't doing stuff to fix it because they don't care, which is really unlikely considering the teachers in this school, but I suppose it's possible that at least people will know about it and the administration will know about it. Um, and like from what I've seen very few people like actually doing that. I mean, maybe they've been talking to people in breakout rooms. I don't know, but I've been picking up a lot of the lack of communication in the classroom, both in terms of I have to answer like 90% of debate questions, and in terms of me having to speak up to say, okay, so I can do this assignment because I'm really, really good at working in a virtual learning setting, and I'm also pretty good at school in general. But I'm having trouble with it, and I could barely get it done. And considering that I have like a bajillion natural advantages, including but not limited to my different brain type that's better at learning, my introversion that's better at virtual school, the fact that I am, at least to the untrained eye, able to completely fitting into what America has defined as the norm, being from a white middle class family while while pretty liberal, we do live in California, um, is like I have a ton of advantages in terms of school. So if I'm having significant difficulty with an assignment, then it's possible that other students, especially those with brain types that are less conducive to school or home situations that are less conducive to school, like if their family is poor or discriminated against, or usually both, but if they're poor because they're discriminated against, then sometimes kids will have to like do part-time jobs and stuff, or like deal with being the pseudo adult in the house because the adults have to go out and do back-breaking jobs for no pay. um, anyway, like a lot of kids have disadvantages in school where I have advantages. So if I'm having trouble getting something in on time, then they're probably not going to get it in on time at all, and it might be an insurmountable hurdle for them. So I share it with the teachers. And I've been rambling a lot, but I guess that's half the point of an interview.
Right. Yeah, this is great. You can give as much detail as you want.
Yeah.
Usually, yeah, but yeah, that's what an interview is all about. And as far as when other students hit hurdles, it seems like a majority of the time, like when distance learning work is not adjusted, it seems like they just don't complete the checkpoints whatsoever.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a lot of people, myself included, have a ton of difficulty getting stuff in on time sometimes. Like the school day can wear us out, and like the brain is like any other muscle. It gets exhausted and then it needs to rest. And outside of half an hour during lunch, most of which is taken up with eating lunch, we don't get that rest time. So when it's on, well, for me it's Tuesday that I've got three classes. I've got English, then social studies, then Spanish. So for English, I'm doing pretty good, and I can get the stuff done. And then in social studies, I'm doing a bit less good, and I'll get most of it done. But then by the time Spanish rolls along, especially since Spanish is the most difficult class for me, um, I like my brain is exhausted, and a lot of the time an assignment will seem really hard, and I cannot get my brain to focus on it. And then because I'm doing this over the computer, I'll just wind up like reading some reading some fan fiction instead or something, and that's a problem. That's been a problem in in-person summit as well, since there's a lot of computer stuff in in-person summit, and the teacher can't see all our computers. Um, but because I'm not meant to be reading, and it's sort of like going off task, and the teacher is still doing things, it's not nearly as much of a rest for my brain as I would like, and so I end up with late work, and then I still can't figure out how to do the work, and I try to get it done over and at home, but the late work just piles up. Like I'll have it mostly done by the next day, but then I'll get more work assigned, so then I have more work than I was intended to, and then if I end up with less work, and then if I end up not completing all of that, then there's more work, and it piles up until I get some time, like the weekend or a Wednesday or a break, to get it done. Um, but the fact is that there's a lot of late work and there's a lot of not being caught up that sort of piles up.
Right. So speaking of the workload and kind of like the administration, do you think Summit Prep specifically has done enough to support students? And you were talking about students who have to work or be the pseudo parents. Do you believe that Summit Prep has done enough to support them and create a good learning environment?
I mean, virtual school is hard. Nobody knows how to do this. This is like incredibly new. I think I think Summit's doing the best they can. Like, they gave out computers to all the students in case they didn't have any, and that is not cheap. Um, they've um, because of the late work issue, they're a lot more forgiving of late work, is which doesn't solve the entire problem because of the aforementioned build-up issue, but it's certainly very helpful. And you know, there's mentor time again, which mentors are there for kids to talk about when they've got problems, which brings me back to how kids should really talk to their teachers or mentors when they've got problems with this stuff and figure it out together. The, the teachers are not going to attack you for sharing your experience most of the time, unless you do it unless you do it at exactly the wrong time in front of the entire class like I did. Don't do that. Um, and anyhow, yeah, I think Summit's doing the best they can, but I think we should all help them, and that while while the adults are the ones with the capacity to do the majority of the work, this should be a group effort.
Right. So you're saying that students should do more on their part in order to kind of bridge the gap between the administration and students.
Yes. And then there's another problem where students like really do not want to engage over Zoom. I don't know why it is. It might be that they've got other stuff they need to do, like if they're having to manage the other kids in their house, like I said earlier. It might be that they're playing video games or reading their own stuff in class, which I sometimes do, admittedly, because my brain is exhausted. I think we all struggle with that, with the temptation of doing stuff other than school while the teacher can't see us. But we struggle with that in person learning too. Um, there's, I mean, but like the teacher will ask people to explain like something to analyze a quote, and then like maybe after 5-10 minutes a single person will volunteer and give a half-assed explanation out of a 30-person class, which means that because I seem to be the only one in my class willing to engage, I end up answering like 90% of the questions when there aren't people showing up in enough time for the class to stay on its roll thing. um so like please engage with the teach so like please people, um tell the teachers when you've got problems and fix them together. Engage with the class when the teachers are asking questions. I know the temptation of playing video games, but if you play video games in class, then you'll just get sucked into them. I would say if you're going to play video games, which, let's be honest, is probably going to happen, there's not exactly shame in that. We all struggle with that. But set timers, like decide, all right, I'm going to play video games for 20 minutes, but then I need to engage with the class, or I'll connect with the teacher talking, but then I can play video games once we're released to breakout rooms and then get back to the work later. And yes, I know I'm advocating for playing video games, but let's be serious. There's no way to eliminate kids playing video games, so we might as well figure out ways to deal with it rather than bashing our heads into a brick wall. Um,
Right.
and so, like, yeah, that's all I've got to say. And that was a bit rambling, but yeah.
And as far as kind of speaking on engagement and engaging with teachers and classes, so Summit Prep recently implemented the new attendance system, which if you don't get to a class in 10 minutes, then it'll automatically send a robocall home to your parents. And do you think this implementation is more helpful or hurtful to students?
I, yes. Yes, that is my answer. I mean, I think I'm not sure it can exactly be defined as helpful, but I'm not sure it can exactly be defined as hurtful. I mean, robocalling someone's parents does give like an element, adds in like a sort of fear element, especially given that one's parents might be doing other important things and not exactly welcome the robocall. Um, but that does also help with motivating to get to class. And but motivation through fear is never a good strategy. I think I think maybe what could be done is if a kid has their own phone, then like at 10 minutes or at minutes or at 5 minutes, they could send a robocall to the kid's phone to let them know that, hey, class is happening, you should probably get there. And then later, 5 or 10 minutes after that, they could send a robocall to the parents. Because like it's possible that kids are not being able to drag themselves into school or intentionally not going to school, but there's a fine line between intentionally skipping school and impulsively skipping school from the impulses we all have. I know it's heck of hard to drag myself out of video games or book reading or what has you. Um, but it's also possible that kids might just be forgetting the classes there. Hell, because of all the like on Mondays and such, like on Mondays I have SDL at the very end of the day. So I'm often doing SDL by myself, and then I forget that habits and content development is a thing because it feels like the end of the day, and HCD is basically SDL anyway. There's just a check in with the teacher at the start of it. So yeah, I can understand people forgetting class, and I don't think the current system is perfect.
So you're saying that um, parents shouldn't receive a robocall right away, but we should have a new system where students get a robocall or students just get a call. And if they can't get through to students, then they should call parents.
Yes, like I think students should be given a reminder to ensure that like it's not just them forgetting there is class. And then if they still keep not going to class, then we go with a black mark on the attendance record and a call to their parents.
Mhm. And on to the next question. You've spoken out about the way classes function in the past, and you kind of already answered this actually. Why do you feel it's important to speak up when it comes to distance learning and really to just education as a whole?
Well, I already said that I've already said this, but I'm willing to reiterate it. Learning shouldn't be adversarial. It shouldn't be like a subordinate thing. It shouldn't be like like a army drill sergeant, respect my authority kind of thing. Summit is pretty good at that, but other schools I've been to have been less so. Learning should be collaborative. It shouldn't be something where the teachers hand down commandments from on high with no discussion or possibility of questioning them, and then the students proceed to figure out the best way to ignore them and play video games in class. I think I think education can and should be a collaborative effort, and I think that especially in this really ambiguous and hard to figure out time of virtual learning, students need to share their experiences with teachers of virtual learning so that teachers can fix the problems because we're all figuring out how the heck we're going to manage this.
Right. So it's like a group effort.
Yes.
And what advice would you give to students who are struggling with the switch from face to face and to distance learning, which possibly distance learning could be um, going on for even far past when the pandemic is over? So, what advice would you give to students who are still struggling with the switch?
So I don't really think I'm qualified to give advice, but I would say like but I've already given the only piece of advice I can really figure out, which is to seriously talk to people, discuss the problems you have with the teachers, maybe also with your parents if it's a problem in the environment of the house, and figure out how to solve them.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, I totally agree that this is a group effort, and I mean we're all kind of learning as we go. And I think to really make distance learning work, we need to have the same engagement that we have in face-to-face learning, which is on both parts on the part of the administration and of just the students. So yeah, that's all the questions I had. Thanks so much, John, for doing this interview.